What was your first encounter with utter bullcrap during your childhood? My mom finding a cigarette in the backyard, accusing me of having stolen a friend's mom's cigarettes to secretly smoke there and grounding me for it despite me not having done any such thing. I was like 9 at that time. When I was in 3rd grade I got suspended for being beat up on the playground. They had a zero tolerance for violence policy. Also I never took a swing, just punished for being bullied. I was bullied a lot in elementary school. To be fair, I was a pretty easy target for the bullying. R/roast me would have a meltdown not knowing where to start. So every day at lunch and recess I would get chased and harassed by 4 other boys. One day the teacher assigned to keep order on the playground grabbed me and told me to quit running. But of course, as soon as I did the 4 boys began pushing and taunting me. So I started running again. Next thing I know the teacher grabs me by the arm and starts to paddle me. Teachers could do that back then. She missed my ass and caught me in the back again. So I cussed at her. She sent me to the principal's office, and when I told him what had happened he just shook his head, then had me stand up to take 3 licks from his paddle. 5th grade is when I learned the world was utter bullcrap. I was 4 years old. In preschool, we were having water day, which was this day full of water-based fun activities. Little kid me had been looking forward to this for weeks. Before we had free time to enjoy all the water games and kiddie pools, we had to do some mandatory team building games. There was this girl who hated me for no reason, and of course I got put by her. We were doing this game where we had to pass a solo cup full of water down the line of kids as fast as possible. So cup gets to me, I try to hand it to her. She stares at me for like 10 seconds while I hold this cup like a jackass, waiting for her to take the damn cup. Our team loses. She grabs the cup and splashes it on herself. She starts screaming/bawling. Teachers come over and she babbles about how I wouldn't give her the cup then threw it at her when we lost. I get left alone in the music room all day staring at the gray walls while the rest of the class got to have fun playing in water. It was such bullcrap it formed a core memory. The first time I was followed by a couple of guys in a car. I was 12. I ran to the nearest house for help, and I asked them if we should call the police, and they said no. Looking back, I think they were wrong. Also, this happened in rural Illinois. In preschool, my mom gave me a book of math problems and said if I got them all done by the end of the day, I'd get a reward. I did the crap out of those math problems. My reward was a hug. I felt like Patrick from the Valentine's episode of SpongeBob. Also, I feel I should clarify my mom and I love each other very much. It's just when you're 5 and you hear the word reward, you tend to have high expectations. When our teacher would yell at us if we asked to go to the bathroom at the beginning of class because we should have gone earlier, and then yell at us if we asked to go in the middle of class because we were interrupting, and then yell at us if we wanted to go at the end because we were trying to ditch since the class was almost over. My mom, you don't lie to others. Also my mom, getting caught red-handed while telling a lie and I had to call her out on it. Was asked to watch the rectory on Friday nights so the priests could have a night off. I was 12 years old. My job basically was to accept food that was brought by parishioners for the priests and find a place for it in their jam-packed double-glass store refrigerator that was as wide as 2 refrigerators. There were 4 priests at our tiny parish. I accepted fully cooked roasts, hams, casseroles and cakes. I was told not to eat anything. A few months later I was made to clean the convent with a couple of the nuns as a punishment for talking too much in class. There were 23 nuns who lived on site and taught school. Their kitchen had a tiny refrigerator and when it was lunchtime they opened a cupboard of expired canned goods. We had very old tomato soup for lunch with stale bread and milk made from powder. I asked them if they knew about the food over at the rectory and they said no. Who threw that paper plane at the teacher? No one is confessing? Alright then, everyone is punished. My mom would ask my opinion on things constantly. I would say it didn't matter to me, or whatever she thought was best, but she would force the issue until I finally answered. Then she would scream at me about how I didn't understand or I was an idiot or I never thought of her needs. I still panic a little when people ask for my opinion on something. When I was in kindergarten we had that thing where you had a grid of boxes, and in each box was a word. You would have to cut out each box individually, then arrange the words in some order. After a few months of cutting out each box like we had been shown, I figured that cutting out the rows and putting them on top of each other so the boxes lined up, and cutting them out like that, would take a lot less time. My teacher saw me do this. I had to stay in at recess to cut them out the right way. My little sister pushed me down the stairs and I got in trouble for antagonizing her. She wouldn't do that for no reason. You did not know your daughter, Mom and Dad. To my knowledge, it was for no reason. It was the morning, so I hadn't even gotten the chance to piss her off. Also, it wasn't the first time she had done it, just the first time my parents got involved. Dad tax. I have done chores for you all week. I have received payment from you in the form of allowance for doing said chores. I have used that allowance to buy candy per your request, because if you want something you pay for it yourself. And now you come in the room yelling dad tax and steal half of it. That is some bull crap. Learning that you can't start a sentence with the word "and," despite, me being fed that information since year 3. I was around 7 to 8. It was sports day in my school and I participated in Pass the Baton. I was enjoying myself and trying my hardest, but at the end of it my class teacher told my mom, in front of me, that I was too slow. Not sure why I took it to heart, but I just felt disappointed and it made me lose confidence in sports. First grade, teacher tells the class to complete the worksheet and there is to be no talking. We all start on the worksheet, and a boy behind me starts talking to me about something. I turn and tell him to stop talking. Teacher called me out and made me go to the front and turn my card from green to yellow. Red is the next warning and means you're going to the principal's office. I was so distraught. I'd never gotten in trouble before. I stood under the slide the entire recess crying and then cried off and on the whole rest of the day silently. I just knew my parents were going to be so disappointed and would of course know before I got home. When I got home and they didn't know I'd had to turn my card, I told them. They asked me why I was talking and I told them the story. Mom said, "Well, he shouldn't have been talking, but let the teacher deal with him. You shouldn't. It's okay. It's not the end of the world." I was aghast. What? It isn't? I can still go back to school? It won't be on my permanent record? My life isn't over and I won't be labeled a bad kid forever? I felt like I got my second chance at life. I wanted to add, since I remembered it after I posted, when I was crying under the slide at recess, I had a whole good kid posse around me comforting me and trying to make me feel better. Man, I miss the good old days, when friends were friends and people were nice to one another. Not the first, but one that sticks out strongly in my mind. Me laying in a hospital bed after an overdose when I was 13, and my mother and father were standing on opposite sides of the bed screaming and yelling at each other over me. I recall making eye contact with a nurse for a notable length of time. Eating dog food because my mother used the child support for cigarettes. Being told I could not use the restroom in class. I was not a cut up and really had to go. It was dehumanizing. My mom informs everyone dinner is ready by yelling from the bottom of the stairs and expects me to hear her despite my room being on the other side of the house, my door being closed, and my TV being on. Also my mom, "Don't yell from the top of the stairs. You need to ask me in person or else I can't hear you. I'm not made of ears, you know." In first grade, getting my yellow card flipped to red while I was in the bathroom. The teacher flipped everyone in the class one card while I was away because I guess she had it with us. F you, Ms. Smith. Back in elementary school I was somewhat misbehaved, and let me tell you that annoying a bunch of power-tripping elementary school administrators will get you a lot of bull crap. I was sent to the principal's office for knocking over a cone during gym class. I was sent to the guidance counselor, basically used the same way as the principal's office, for tearing a piece of paper. Not me specific, but there were lists posted on the wall of the school dictating which recess games kids in each grade could play. Octopus tag, for example, might only be allowed in second and third grade. If you wanted to play a game that was not on the list, you were required to talk to the principal. How one would arrange such a meeting was never really clear. I was scolded for playing pretend Star Wars during recess because it encouraged violence. I was asked if I needed a chew toy to help me concentrate. I wasn't focusing on classwork because I found it too easy. This was back before classrooms were super tech-savvy. One afternoon, the teacher was trying a new system and wanted the class to participate. She couldn't get it to work and called the tech support guy. Well, this took a long time. We were just sitting there quietly, waiting impatiently, and the time for recess came. The teacher didn't let us go to recess because she couldn't figure out the computer program. This happened 11 years ago, and I am still angry. My mom gave birth to my half-brother when I was about 3. I remember being home with her right after she came from the hospital when 3-year-old me asked Mom, "Do we have to keep him?" And that's when I realized life sure as crap ain't all about you. At least I got that lesson real early. I saved my money to buy a pair of X-ray specs from the back of a comic book. They didn't work for crap. I went to a private school where I was bullied a lot. No one in admin did much when my friends and I reported it. Occasionally a lecture from the AP for the entire class with no specifics or calling out. In 5th or 6th grade, one of my bullies kept pinching my ass in line for PE. Didn't read into that at the time, until I finally turned around and screamed at him to knock it the F off. I got detention and was forced to apologize, speechless face. Realizing how people reproduce. An emotional and verbally abusive sister. F off, Sarah. My cousins often stole money and broke things and didn't say anything so they wouldn't get in trouble. I remember one particular time my aunt kept asking me if I broke it. I don't even remember what it was, some kind of piece in container, over and over, even though I always told the adults if I broke something or made a mistake. I still got blamed, and I think it's just because she just wanted it to be my fault for once instead of my cousins. Edit. I remembered another one. So when I was little back in my home country, I used to save up dollars. Once in a while someone would give me a dollar bill and I'd stash it away. I had $6 saved over my 10 years, and when I was leaving with my stepdad to come to the US, my aunt decided that I had to give up those dollars because my cousin did some stupid crap, and they had to bail him out again, so they needed all the money they could get. She also pressured me to give up my gold earrings and a ring I had, presents I got a while back, because again, since I was going to the US I didn't need them. I was forced to give up even the little favorite toys I had when I left, but I stuck to it and kept my little ring and necklace, and got a lecture and shamed for it. We're not rich in the US, BTW. I work my ass off and so do my parents, and we all always have. My cousins just never saved anything and always did stupid crap and still haven't changed. Only one is slightly better because he got lucky with a wife who's smart. Definitely not the first, but it's an early one that I really remembered. Dad bought a full EU pallet of assorted M3, M4, M6 screws, nuts and washers directly from a factory, all unsorted because apparently that was marginally cheaper than buying it sorted in boxes like a normal person. Me and my brother were forced to sort all of it properly in Tupperware. I was like 4 to 5. That was freaking bull crap. Also, guess who did jack freaking crap in helping sort it? Free work. Apparently, these random people who were staying over at my house just casually expected me to write a computer program for them after I mentioned learning Python. When I asked them how much they were willing to pay, they gawked at the idea. I then had to deal with them whining at me about how much I didn't respect them while they tried to give increasingly nonsensical explanations for why I should work for them for free. Highlights include explaining how me doing free work for them educated me in computer science. I was already studying on my own. Claiming that everybody owed everybody for their contributions to society in the vein of if Alice cut Bob's hair and he paid $10 for it, everybody else also needs to pay Alice, and that I needed to pay him back for having a job by doing free work, repeatedly asking why can't you do X, when I raised my objections to their fallacious reasoning, and then claiming that I couldn't reasonably reason through every single objection with the response because I have no incentive or obligation to, therefore I couldn't refuse their demands, arguing that my work wasn't worth getting paid for. Arguing their satisfaction at receiving free work was more important than me getting paid for it. After I attempted to explain the obvious to them by using analogies such as having to pay for services, such as a plumber, and pointing out how ridiculous it would be for adults to walk up to random children and begin demanding free work from them, amongst many other counter-arguments, they essentially threw a fit for not getting what they wanted. I was left aghast at how entitled some people could be. Going through my parents' cabinets for no reason and finding receipts from things I recently got from Santa on Christmas. I had a cousin who would bite anyone just for the fun of it. Her mom would tell everyone not to punish her cause her 3-year-old was just a child and didn't understand what she was doing. So, all of us kids would get bite marks on our arms or face and couldn't do anything about it. Except one day when I decided I had enough. Now, I was the kind of child that never got into trouble, would play by myself for hours and got along with pretty much everyone. The parents knew this and didn't expect my reaction when baby devil teeth tried to go for my hand because I wouldn't let her destroy my domino stack. Without hesitation, I slapped her right on the mouth. It made a popping sound. It wasn't too hard, just enough to surprise her. She cried bloody murder. Her mom didn't say a word. The other parents were cheering internally. The biting stopped after that moment. Some adults really suck at parenting. Turned in 2 papers in 3rd grade that were not facing the right way. Got held in 10 minutes from recess because they won't let you do that in college or in business. Never had an issue with it in college. Worked a retail job with daily paperwork. They didn't care what the paper looked like as long as they could read it and as long as it was done. I lost an argument with the class bully who claimed that houses were painted using sketch pens. I was 900% sure they weren't, I just didn't know the name of the thing that was used to color houses. I had a bully that would consistently say racist things to me. I'm Asian. The typical slanted eyes, small dick jokes, etc. etc. I didn't know how to approach it, but given our desks were close to the teacher, I prayed and hoped the teacher would one day overhear it and take action. One day during a lesson King Arthur, the teacher used the phrase chink in the armor, and of course the racist kid kept mumbling, "Hey Nakadab step, that's you." The teacher stopped and asked if he had anything to say. I was super excited and finally thinking my prayers were answered. This kid was going to get owned. He said chink in the armor, that's Nakadab step. Everyone, including the teacher, laughed while I just sat there in disbelief. To add salt to the wound, the teacher said, "Thanks for being a good sport Nakadab step." The "because it is" argument. Even as a kid, I knew it was bullcrap. I didn't know that what it meant was there is a reason, but I don't think you'll be able to understand it, and in any case, I want to get things done this afternoon, not go down a rabbit hole that finishes with me trying to figure out a way to explain the finer points of quantum physics to a 6-year-old. My nephew and I are similar in age, and one day we were playing outside just having a good time. He falls on the ground, cuts his leg and starts crying. I run over to console him and my mother runs out of the house, irate with me assuming I had hurt him. She pulls me inside the house by my hair, kicks me in the balls hard, and flung me onto the floor. Mind you, I wasn't even 10 yet. She makes me kneel on the hardwood floor for hours praying that I wouldn't be such a bad child. Meanwhile my nephew, still in tears, tries to tell her I didn't do it, but she wouldn't listen to him. My buddy busted a window at his house. I was completely innocent and didn't do anything to help, yet his mother told my parents it was my fault, so that my dad would pay to fix it. Of course, I got grounded and had to pay dad back. It would be justified if I actually broke the window. I lost a whole summer, unable to go hang out with friends or do anything fun. All because that bish was a cheapskate. I'm not friends with him anymore, but I did get to see his mom later on. She was the kind of person who would wear clothes once and return them, so I knew what she was doing. I told her we couldn't accept the returns because she washed the receipt and I couldn't verify it was legitimate, even though I could. So I screwed her out of money too. I'm a terrible person for doing it, but she was a bish. When we were 17, a friend of mine was the biggest bullcrapter. I've known him since we were 8 years old. He told me he had a twin brother who died when he was 14. I don't know what went through his head, lol. Being told that I could stay up just a little later than usual to watch the new episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Only to be told to go to bed right at the time it would be starting. Or my mom talking all throughout the shows I want to watch and then shutting up when the commercials are on only to be told to be quiet while her shows are on. Or being asked questions about my day during dinner right as I take a bite only to be told not to talk with food in my mouth and then not talking, but then being asked if I'm ignoring the question. I never got in trouble in school. Then, 3rd grade, I was constantly in trouble and I never knew why. 4th grade back to never being in trouble. I'm an only child and grew up speaking to adults and them speaking to me like they would anyone else. So when I spoke to this teacher, I talked to her like I would my parents. Turns out she thought it was disrespectful that I spoke to her as an equal and not an authority figure. To this day I'm still a bit salty about it. Bunch of bull crap. My mom told me that all kids only saw their dad once a week. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.